and far after the match I already knew I made a mistake, and it was something really, really stupid.
Imagine watching your favorite darts player nail a perfect finish, only to find out later the entire match was rigged. Darts isn't just about precision and nerves, it's also been rocked by secret deals, suspicious betting, and careers destroyed in an instant. These aren't minor slip-ups, they're scandals that changed how fans see the game forever. Today, we're exposing 7 of the biggest cheating controversies in darts, and some of them are almost too wild to believe. The year was 2020, the world was on lockdown, and darts, like every other sport, was scrambling to keep going. That's when the Modus Live League, an online competition streamed straight from players' living rooms, became a lifeline for fans. It seemed like a harmless solution: no crowds, no travel, just webcams, scoreboards, and players throwing from home. But what should have been a simple fix turned into one of dart's darkest scandals. Kyle McKinstry, nicknamed the Village Man, was a Northern Irish pro with a reputation for grit and passion on the oche. But in April of that year, something didn't look right. In one match against David Evans, McKinstry lost 5-0, barely putting up resistance. Bookmakers flagged the odds movement immediately. Bettors had piled money on Evans winning without dropping a leg. Just days later, another match raised eyebrows: McKinstry versus Wessel Neiman. Suspicious bets flowed in again, this time on a very specific outcome: McKinstry failing to hit a single 180, and when that exact result played out, the alarm bells couldn't be ignored. Behind the scenes, investigators from the Darts Regulation Authority and the International Betting Integrity Association went to work. Betting companies shared data showing strange spikes in wagers that matched these unlikely outcomes. In other words, this wasn't bad luck or a poor performance, it looked deliberate. McKinstry was called in, and while he admitted to fixing the Evans match, he denied deliberately losing against Nijman. But the case didn't stop there. When the DRA demanded his mobile phone billing records to confirm messages, McKinstry failed to comply. That refusal only made things worse. And then came Nijman himself. The Dutch youngster, just 20 years old at the time, confessed he'd agreed to throw a match after being approached online. He later said he felt pressured, that he was young and naive, and that the offer of easy money during a pandemic was too tempting to ignore. While Nijman insisted he never intended to actually go through with other offers he received, his admission was enough to prove that match fixing had crossed a dangerous new line. The punishment was brutal but necessary. McKinstry was banned for 8 years, ruling him out of competition until 2028, effectively wiping out the prime of his career. Nijman received a 5-year ban, though half of it was suspended to allow for rehabilitation if he cooperated with investigations and stayed clean. For 2 players, especially a young talent with huge potential, it was a devastating fall. But the scandal didn't just end with bans. For fans, it shattered trust. Online darts, which had been a fun pandemic substitute, now carried the stink of corruption. And for the sport itself, it was a wake-up call. Betting syndicates were watching, players were vulnerable, and the integrity of darts was hanging by a thread. And just when people thought this was an isolated case, another player would soon prove that match fixing wasn't a one-time mistake. It was becoming a dangerous trend. Long before the pandemic and online leagues, darts had already seen a scandal that shook the sport at its very core. In 2017, all eyes were on London's Alexandra Palace for the PDC World Championship, the biggest stage in darts where legends are made and underdogs dream of glory. But one player wasn't remembered for his skill that year. Instead, Filipino darter Gilbert Ulang became infamous for all the wrong reasons. Ulang wasn't a household name. To many fans, he was the kind of story people love, a competitor from a country where darts doesn't get much international spotlight, given the chance to step up on the world's grandest stage. But in his preliminary round match against Hong Kong's Ting Chi Royden Lam, something seemed off. Ulang looked distracted, throwing wild darts at key moments, missing doubles in ways that didn't make sense for someone with his ability. Viewers at home sensed it, bookmakers sensed it, and soon the Darts Regulation Authority started asking serious questions. What followed was an investigation that revealed something darker than just a bad day at the office. The DRA determined that Ulang had deliberately lost the match, colluding with betting interests who stood to profit from the result. In other words, what fans had seen wasn't nerves or pressure or stage fright, it was a performance, bought and paid for. The World Championship, the crown jewel of darts, had just been tainted by deliberate match fixing. For a sport that prided itself on fair competition, this was devastating. The World Championship is supposed to represent the pinnacle of honesty and excellence, where every dart counts and the best rise to the top. To learn that one of those matches was compromised left fans furious and disillusioned. Oolang's actions didn't just damage his own career, they cast a shadow over the entire event. The punishment was severe. After a lengthy investigation, the DRA banned Gilbert Oulang for 7 years, beginning in 2018. Effectively, it ended his career at the professional level. For a player who had worked his way onto the world stage, it was a self-inflicted implosion. Instead of being remembered as a pioneer for Filipino darts, his name became a cautionary tale. But the impact went further than just one player. This scandal showed how vulnerable even the highest levels of darts could be. If someone could walk onto the stage at Ali Pali, the sport's biggest showcase, and throw a match for money, what did that mean for all the smaller competitions with less scrutiny? It was a frightening thought, and it forced regulators and fans alike to reckon with the tough reality. The battle against corruption in darts wasn't just theoretical, it was already here. And while Oolang's case was shocking, the years ahead would prove it wasn't an isolated story. In fact, when younger stars like Leighton Bennett came along, people believed darts had found a new golden hope. But what happened next showed just how wrong that belief could be. When Leighton Bennett burst onto the scene, he wasn't just another young prospect, he was hailed as the future of darts. Nicknamed Boom Boom, Bennett made history in 2019 when he became the youngest ever BDO World Youth Champion at only 13 years old. Fans were captivated by his raw talent, his fearless throwing style, and the sense that a new superstar was emerging. But just a few years later, that bright future went up in smoke, dragged down by one of the sport's biggest match-fixing scandals. By 2023, Bennett was playing in the Moda Super Series, a competitive league designed to give up-and-coming talent exposure and experience. But this stage didn't showcase his skill, it exposed his downfall. Betting regulators flagged 4 of his matches for suspicious activity. Unusual patterns showed heavy money being placed on highly specific outcomes, and when those exact results played out, the suspicion was undeniable. The Darts Regulation Authority launched a deep investigation. What they uncovered was staggering. Bennett wasn't just accused of throwing matches, he faced a list of 10 separate charges. These included deliberately fixing outcomes, passing inside information to betting contacts, signing with an unregistered agent, and even refusing to fully cooperate with investigators. What they uncovered was staggering. Bennett wasn't just accused of throwing matches, he faced a list of 10 separate charges. These included deliberately fixing outcomes, passing inside information to betting contacts, signing with an unregistered agent, and even refusing to fully cooperate with investigators. For a teenager once painted as darts' golden child, the revelations hit fans like a sledgehammer. But Bennett wasn't alone. Alongside him stood Billy Warriner, another player accused of orchestrating the scheme. Warriner's role went beyond simply fixing matches. The DRA charged him with 19 breaches of the rules. These ranged from conspiring with Bennett to spreading insider details to failing to cooperate with the inquiry. Where Bennett's case was shocking because of his youth and promise, Warriner's charges painted a picture of deeper planning, a conspiracy that threatened the credibility of the entire Super Series. The punishments were crushing. Bennett was handed an 8-year ban, while Warriner's fate was even harsher, 10 years removed from the sport. Both were hit with costs and financial penalties, ensuring their careers were left in tatters. For Bennett, who should have been climbing toward a World Championship debut, the ban effectively killed the future fans had once imagined for him. For Warriner, the 10-year exile might as well have been a life sentence in professional terms. The fallout was immense. Media headlines turned a prodigy into a pariah almost overnight. Fans who had followed Bennett since he was a child prodigy were stunned, struggling to reconcile the story of a bright young champion with the reality of a player caught in one of the sport's darkest scandals. For darts itself, the case sent a chilling message. If even the brightest young talent could fall into the trap of fixing, no player was immune. And yet, as damning as Bennett and Warriner's story was, the scandals of 2023 weren't finished. Just months later, another veteran would be caught in the exact same storm, showing that this wasn't just about young players cracking under pressure. Even seasoned professionals weren't safe from the lure of corruption. If the Leighton Bennett and Billy Warriner scandal showed how young players could be tempted into corruption, the case of Prakash Jiwa proved that experience and seniority were no shield against temptation. Jiwa wasn't a rookie. He had been around the professional circuit for years, competing in PDC events and carving out a reputation as a steady, hard-working player. But in 2023, that reputation collapsed overnight. It all started in the Modus Super Series, the same league that had already been rocked by Bennett and Warrener. Jiwa played 4 matches that immediately raised suspicions. The scorelines alone looked strange, 2 defeats by 4-0 and 2 more by 4-1. On paper, pros can have off days, but the odds of such consistent heavy losses in such a short span raised eyebrows. And once again, the betting markets told a bigger story. The International Betting Integrity Association reported unusual patterns, with large sums of money being wagered on those exact results. It wasn't coincidence, it was a red flag. When the Darts Regulation Authority stepped in, they uncovered damning evidence. Jiwa was accused not only of deliberately fixing those 4 matches, but also of placing bets on darts himself, an outright breach of the rules. He denied obstructing the investigation, and on that point he was cleared, but the other charges stuck. For a veteran player who should have been setting an example, the findings were a disaster. The punishment matched the seriousness of the offences. Jiwa was banned for 8 years, instantly erasing any hope of continuing a professional career. On top of that, he was ordered to pay investigation costs of £17,741.46, a financial hit that added insult to injury. For someone who had spent years building credibility in the sport, the stain of this scandal was permanent. His name, once associated with persistence and experience, was now tied to one of darts' most shameful episodes, but the impact went beyond one man. Jiwa's case highlighted how deeply the problem had spread through the Super Series. It wasn't just a youth issue or a one-off scandal, this was a system under siege from match fixing. Fans began asking uncomfortable questions. How many other matches might have been influenced? How many times had they cheered for results that weren't real? The integrity of the competition was in question, and the DRA knew it had to act harder than ever. For Jiwa, the ban was effectively career-ending. For the sport, it was yet another warning siren blaring. The message was clear. Darts was being tested like never before, and the line between legitimate play and corruption was far thinner than fans wanted to believe. And while Jiwa's story was one of proven guilt, the next scandal would be different. This time, the controversy didn't come from match fixing or suspicious betting. It came from one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, caught in a storm of accusations that still divides opinion today. Not every darts scandal comes down to shady betting or proven match fixing. Sometimes, controversy strikes at the very top of the sport, right in front of the cameras, and even the greatest player of all time can find his name dragged through the mud. That's exactly what happened in 2013 when Phil Taylor, the Power, was accused of cheating in an incident that still sparks debate to this day. The setting was the Gibraltar Darts Trophy. Taylor was facing Dean Winstanley in a tense match when the moment came. He stepped up to finish the leg on double 12, one of the most iconic checkouts in darts. The dart left his hand, landed near the wire, and at first glance it looked like it had fallen outside of the double 12 bed. Even on the TV broadcast, the replay seemed to show the dart resting just outside the scoring area, but referee Russ Bray called it good, awarding Taylor the checkout and giving him the leg. To casual viewers, it might have looked like an ordinary scoring call, but to die-hard darts fans, this was explosive. Social media erupted with accusations that Taylor had been given the leg unfairly, with some claiming the 16-time world champion had knowingly accepted a point he didn't earn. Words like cheating and fix were thrown around, and the idea of the sport's most decorated legend being caught in such an incident sent shockwaves through the community. Taylor himself responded quickly. He insisted he had no idea the dart was outside until the controversy erupted. In his own words, he offered to replay the match, even saying he'd give back the prize money if necessary. For him, it was never about deception, it was about trusting the referee's call. And in darts, the referee's word is final. Still, for many fans, the sight of that dart and the call that followed was enough to plant doubt. The Professional Darts Corporation, PDC, reviewed the incident and ultimately ruled it a simple referee error. No foul play, no intent to cheat, no ban. Taylor's record remained untarnished in official terms, but perception is a powerful thing and the controversy left a scar. For a player who had built his career on unmatched dominance, the whispers of "did he really know?" lingered long after the event. What made this scandal unique wasn't the punishment, because there was none, but the way it reminded fans how fragile trust can be. One misjudged call, one dart that looks wrong on replay, and even the sport's most legendary figure can find himself accused of dishonesty. Taylor's legacy remains one of greatness, but the double 12 incident has become a permanent footnote in his story, a reminder that in darts, reputation can be shaken in a single throw. And if a legend like Phil Taylor wasn't safe from controversy, what did that mean for everyone else? The answer would come in the years that followed, as more cases, harsher punishments, and bigger scandals proved that the fight to keep darts clean was only getting harder. Section 5. Missed majors and decline in results. After his breakthrough run in 2023, Gabriel Clemens entered the following seasons with the kind of expectations he had never carried before. But instead of cementing himself among the elite, the results told a very different story. At the 2024 World Championship, Clemens' campaign ended in the third round with the root problem is simple but dangerous: money. The explosion of online betting has turned darts into a lucrative market for gamblers. Every throw, every leg, every checkout can be wagered on. That means players, especially those outside the very top tier, are constantly surrounded by temptation. Many of them don't earn the millions that the top names do. For a struggling professional, a quiet offer of cash to lose a leg or miss a 180 can look like an easy payday. But as the scandals have shown, the cost of giving in is far greater than the reward. Technology has made it easier to catch these infractions, but it's also made them harder to hide. Suspicious betting patterns are now flagged almost instantly by monitoring groups like the International Betting Integrity Association. Regulators can see when an unusual number of bets are placed on a bizarre outcome, like a player losing without winning a leg. That's how McKinstry, Nijman, Jaiwa, and Bennett all found themselves under the spotlight. But the fact these bets keep appearing shows the battle is still ongoing. The other issue is perception. Even when no match fixing is proven, as in Phil Taylor's double 12 controversy, the damage to trust can be lasting. Fans don't just want fair play, they need to believe they're watching fair play. The second that belief cracks, every missed double or unusual checkout becomes suspicious. And once fans lose faith, the integrity of the entire sport is at risk. The Darts Regulation Authority has responded with some of the toughest bans in professional sports: 8 years, 10 years, even lifetime suspensions in certain cases. Those punishments aren't just about punishing the guilty, they're warnings to every other player watching. The message is blunt: if you compromise the game, your career is over. Still, critics argue that more needs to be done, not just punishing offenders, but protecting vulnerable players before they make bad choices. Because that's the heart of the issue. Many of these scandals don't come from greed alone, they come from pressure. Young players struggling with expectations, veterans trying to hang on to careers, all of them surrounded by betting markets worth millions. In that environment, darts isn't just a test of skill, it's a test of integrity. And as we've seen, plenty have failed that test. The bigger question is, what comes next? With scandals hitting both rookies and legends, is this just the tip of the iceberg? Are there still more fixed matches hiding in plain sight, games fans celebrated without ever realizing they were watching a con? For darts, the fight for credibility is ongoing, and every scandal makes the next one easier to believe. And if the past decade is any indication, the sport's biggest challenge won't be about who can throw the best dart, it'll be about who can keep the game honest. From Kyle McKinstry's online fixes during lockdown, to Gilbert Oolang's World Championship disgrace, to the shocking fall of Leighton Bennett, and even the controversy surrounding Phil Taylor, the biggest name in darts, the past decade has shown just how fragile the sport's reputation really is. These weren't just bad days at the Ush, they were deliberate choices, hidden deals, and moments that left fans questioning the very core of the game they love. The punishments have been brutal. 8-year bans, 10-year exiles, fines that ruin careers, but the damage isn't just to the players. Every scandal chips away at the trust between fans and the sport itself. Because when darts is honest, it's magic. One throw, one double, one perfect finish that sends the crowd into chaos. But when corruption creeps in, that magic disappears. And here's the unsettling truth. If these 7 scandals could happen in plain sight, what else might still be hidden in the shadows? Could there be more matches, more players, more results that weren't as real as they looked? That's the question fans are left with, and it's a question that darts as a sport has no choice but to answer. Because in the end, darts isn't just about hitting the right number on the board, it's about earning the trust of every fan watching. And once that trust is gone, no perfect checkout can bring it back.